Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Rahim Rahimtullah. Joining me today is Ihor Poshyvailo. He is the director of the Maidan Museum. Mr. Poshyvailo, many thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Just for the audience members who perhaps aren't so aware, the Maidan Museum, this is the Maidan, this is the winter of 2013-2014. This was the pro-EU, anti-government uprising that we had here in Ukraine. 100 people lost their lives in that movement. You're now leading a project to build a museum to those events. Tell us a little bit more about the project.
The Maidan Museum idea, it was born during the events of the winter 2013-2014, when a small group of museum activists, Maidan activists and representatives of the Maidan initiatives, we have understood that what's going around us, it's not just a trivial thing, it's something very important and historical for changing the country and changing the people. And that's why we're starting preserving some elements of the events around us. We started collecting objects, stories in situ. And later on, when people were killed, another mission of our initiative just was launched to make memorialization, to preserve places of memory of these events. But speaking about Maidan Museum, it's not only about the events of Euromaidan events, because Maidan it's like Agora, it's a special space where people come and they think about their future and they express their voices, how they see their country, their future. Especially for Ukrainians, a tradition, Viche, like people gather together and decide how to defend their independence or implement the ideas of freedom and dignity. And so the Maidan Museum is going to tell stories not only about Euromaidan, but about the previous Maidans, like Orange Revolution, and even before, the whole history of Ukraine movement for independence.
Okay. So you want this museum then to look backwards, but it sounds like you also would like it to be a space where people can also look forwards.
This museum is envisioned as a starting point for discussion about rethinking our history and our identity. So the story will start in the past, but we will continue into the future, because it is important for us not to conserve the events of the past, but how to make this museum relevant, important for creating future, for rethinking what's happening today for us, and how to make this museum important for the next generations. Because a lot of people were killed. They just sacrificed their lives not to be memorialized like monuments, but we should implement their ideas for freedom, for independence, for better future for Ukraine in our real changing of the country.
But at the moment, as I understand, this museum actually it doesn't have a site yet. So it was only officially announced a few weeks ago. Tell us a little bit more. What are the difficulties in actually getting this project off the ground?
The biggest challenge is that this Maidan Museum initiative, public initiative, right now is institutionalizing into the state-run museum, according to the decree of the President and of the Cabinet of Ministers. But the main problem is that no location defined at the moment, no funding at all. We have collection, we have already tested elements of future exhibitions. The international contest for architectural projects, for the building, for the memorialization of the public space have already been done last May. So today the biggest challenge is location, place, physical space.
Do the authorities see this somehow as some kind of threat? Is there something deeper going on here? Do they want to just sweep it under the carpet and they would rather that these events, because they're very contested. I mean, exactly what happened there, who won, who lost, is it a good or is it a bad thing for Ukraine? I mean, these are very complicated issues. Is there a sense that it would be better to just leave these not talked about?
I think it's not a good way to stop thinking about this, because this museum is envisioned as a platform for discussion, for thinking, for consolidating our nation. And the mentality of authorities is that they do not understand the meaning of such like public institutions, how they can help improve our political crisis, even economical. And the location in the downtown, it's not easy and not for local authorities to give this special place in the downtown, which costs lots of money for some public institution. It's not in the post-Soviet mentality, unfortunately.
No. How are you going to change that? I mean, what's going to be the trigger here that's going to actually get this project going? Is it going to take an upswell of support from the public? Is that ultimately what's going to make the difference?
We have already started some processes of educational programs. We are making exhibitions. We are consulting with our foreign colleagues. We try to make this project visible on different levels. And I hope we try to engage not only experts on our level. We do not want to impose a curatorial vision to create this museum. We would like to engage people, and we already did it during our Visitors' Voices project. So with time, we try to engage in this process of discussing local authorities, our future visitors, international experts and museum experts in Ukraine. So with time, I hope we will find out how to find the best location for museums so that the capital of Ukraine will benefit of it on different levels.
And presumably the location is in fact tied to the overall message of the museum as well, because, for example, you might want to put this museum downtown where much of the protests took place and where some of the most tragic events took place. I wonder, in relation to the overall message of the museum, what about the sort of darker elements of Maidan? I mean, we always have these ideas that there were right-wing neo-Nazis there, that they also committed crimes. I mean, is your museum going to try to address these debates?
Of course, this is one of the most crucial points for the future museum, to be inclusive, to represent different points of view, to represent different sides of the events which really changed our nation. And it is, but this process is not so easy. It's a hard discussion.
I mean, because it could be difficult, couldn't it, for Ukrainians to actually reflect honestly about what happened there and some of the feelings, some of the emotions which were present on the Maidan. And
it's not only for Ukrainians, it's just international practice. It's not easy to speak today about the events which took place just recently, yesterday.
Yes.
In many countries, even museums of memory, museums of consciousness, museums, so-called museums of bad news, they were opened not in a few years, even decades past, because it depends upon the people's view, because the museum, in fact, should consolidate the nation. It's not easy, and a lot of research should be undertaken to make this museum really important for the society, for the nation, for the country.
Absolutely. I mean, are you feeling a certain pressure then, that you have a lot here to represent, a lot to live up to? There's so many conflicting interests here.
Not really at the moment, because the dominant point is the glorification point, because the side which win, it dominates right now. We have a lot of objects concerning this. And it is quite normal, because usually millions of people stand up and say, we want better future, we stay for European values. It's very, very, very close to our minds, to our history. So Maidan was not a very controversial event. There were different sides, even neutral sides, and not only opposite sides. And it is worthwhile to include them, of course, but the main message is quite clear. Ukraine stand up for a better future, to defend their identity, to defend their freedom and dignity.
Absolutely. We're almost, unfortunately, out of time, Mr. Poshyvailo. I'll have to press you then. Finally, this museum, what do you hope then, perhaps looking a little further down the road, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, presumably your vision, young Ukrainians, perhaps, who don't know anything about Maidan and were not alive at this time, they're going to walk in, and what will they find there?
I think they will be, first of all, proud for the history, especially for their parents or grandparents, who really start changing their country from Maidan, from Euromaidan. And they will find in this museum a special creative space for understanding their past and motivating to create together their future, to be active, proactive, not to look for the authorities' decisions, but to take responsibility for the future.
And do you hope that the country that this museum ultimately will be created in will also be different in that case?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Many thanks for joining us. I'm afraid that's where we'll have to leave our discussion today, but...
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You've been watching Viewpoint. I've been joined by Ihor Poshyvailo. He is the director of the Maidan Museum. Unfortunately, that's where we'll have to leave it today. Thank you very much for watching, and do join us again.